commanding our attention and drawing us closer. Mount Rainier. So filled with extremes, so massive and so dominant, it changes everything it touches. Here you enter a world where colossal forces shape the landscape and fire the imagination. Whether we sense it during moments of quiet contemplation, or when we witness its violent fury, we can always feel the mountain's power to change everything around it. Venture into the park and experience one of the most dynamic forces on Earth, vast and ever-changing, Mount Rainier. 2.5 miles in elevation, Mount Rainier National Park spans from its ice-clad summit to lush river valleys. A glimpse into any corner of the park opens a window onto the full-scale majesty and grandeur of this complex and diverse realm. Sheltered 13,000 feet below the peak, on the northwest edge of the lower mountain, stands the Carbon River Forest. Here, a uniquely wet habitat creates a haven for life. In the forest, toads and other amphibians forge vital links in the food chain. Abundant mosses and lichen packed densely on any available surface, literally covering every square inch. It's so rich with life here, the biomass can exceed that of tropical rainforests. You can practically see plants on the floor growing and then dying before your eyes. But the trees grow much more slowly and live much longer lives, hundreds of years. In turn, when the trees fall, they nurture seedlings. This abundance of life on the park's west side exists only because of heavy rain. Rainfall that's delivered so far inland for one reason: Mount Rainier. Towering into the sky, the mountain is so huge and unyielding, it creates its own weather system. Moisture-laden air skims in from the Pacific and Puget Sound, sweeps over the lower elevations, then slams into the mountain. As the mist and vapor push up the cooler slopes, they condense into clouds. A restless procession flows toward the peak, but the mountain won't always let them pass. Its great mass forms a barrier, and it can trap these clouds and hold them on its western slopes. Up to 90 inches of rain falls on the west side of the mountain every year. Clouds can shroud it for weeks on end, and some visitors never even see the peak. At Mount Rainier, the power of so much water flowing down its steep slopes constantly transfigures the land. Torrential rain over just a few days can wipe out decades of human labor. But in a place where extremes are the rule, all of this water also sustains a wealth of fragile life in the park and beyond. Dozens of rivers and streams nourish old-growth forests. In the southeast corner of the park, trees, some over 1,000 years old, thrive in the grove of the patriarchs. Like oases, the park's forests are literally last stands in what was once a sea of old-growth trees that covered the Pacific Northwest. Mount Rainier's primeval forests harbor specially adapted animals and plants.
Mount Rainier is pretty important for northern spotted owl research in that we have kind of a long-standing database. We've been monitoring owls for more than 10 years now. They have adapted to old-growth forests in that their color patterns on their feathers mimics the light conditions in an old-growth forest. There are places where there's light and shadows, and it's quite a mix. And so an owl standing still or perched somewhere still in an old-growth forest is sometimes pretty hard to see.
Vast tracts of Mount Rainier's wilderness shelter a diversity of animals, from banana slugs that forage along the forest floor to predators that stalk prey in the open meadow. Black bears, which will eat almost anything, including fir trees' new growth, find a true bounty in the park. On sheer slopes, mountain goats cling to solid rock, exposed to raging winds, downpours, and driving snow. In this unlikely home, they forage for sparse grass, safe from predators. Even the mountain's seemingly inhospitable upper slopes are home to life. Above tree line, where few species can survive, colonies of heather have thrived for tens of thousands of years. They grow low to the ground, clustering around rocks to shelter from high winds and crushing ice. Below tree line, where snow blankets the ground for 8 months of the year, one plant species gets a jump on the competition. Hardy avalanche lilies work their way through the melting snow to emerge first. Then, when the weather warms in midsummer, the other wildflowers explode across the subalpine meadows. It's a picturesque race to reproduce, a fierce competition between species to attract bees and other pollinators. When one of the earliest settlers first saw Mount Rainier's flowers in 1888, she was inspired to declare, "Oh, what a paradise." Beauty, however, is only one side of the mountain's complex character. Warm springs throughout the park reveal the source of Mount Rainier's enormous and potentially devastating power. The mountain is a volcano, heated by molten rock lying deep beneath it. A network of vents runs underground, releasing magma-heated water at the park's lowest points and at its highest. Steam escapes at the summit, even on the coldest days. Mount Rainier is just one bead in a fiery necklace of volcanoes that rings the Pacific Ocean.
They're high mountains. And then there's Rainier. It stands so tall and by itself. Mount Rainier is an active volcano. It's also arguably the most dangerous volcano in the Cascade Range. It began to erupt about 500,000 years ago, and since then has erupted repeatedly. Flow after flow after flow of lava has come out. The individual layers, they all drape away from the summit. That's evidence of the repeated eruptions of the volcano.
A clash of titanic forces, fire and ice, shapes the mountain. While lava built it up, glaciers grind it down. Mount Rainier holds one of the largest and most complex glacial systems of any single mountain in the lower 48 states. These glaciers flow down the slopes in slow motion, like rivers of ice. Huge jagged cracks or crevasses form when one part of the glacier moves faster than the others. Embedded rock, gravel, and pumice scrape, scour, and polish the mountain.
The glaciers are the destroyers of the mountain. So the glacier is constantly eroding the mountain and taking the rock that used to be up the top of the mountain and bringing it downhill for the rivers to take out.
Mount Rainier's glaciers supply much of the area's fresh water, storing it in winter as enormous blocks of ice, then releasing some when temperatures rise. The seasonal pattern provides water during drier months and is a key resource for plants, animals, and humans throughout the region. But this same ice poses one of the greatest dangers to surrounding life. When Mount Rainier erupts again, it could be devastating. Volcanic heat, melting even a small amount of the thick mantle of snow and ice, can trigger a catastrophic debris flow known as a lahar.
A lahar is a slurry of rocks and fine-grained material, water, vegetation, whatever gets in its way. It almost looks like a flow of thick, wet concrete rushing down valley.
Mount Rainier has produced some of the most devastating lahars ever recorded. Around 5,600 years ago, a mass of mud rushed down the White River Valley, spreading over a 130 square mile area, much of which is now densely populated. Future lahars could disrupt hundreds of thousands of lives and dramatically reshape the landscape. While the mountain holds enormous destructive potential, people have always seen it as a sanctuary. For thousands of years, we have turned to it as a source of food, shelter, and spiritual renewal. Local tribes, the Nisqually, Cowlitz, Puyallup, Yakima, Muckleshoot, and Squaxin Island, moved up and down the mountain. Today, some return to carry on the age-old traditions of collecting bear grass for basket making.
From the beginning of time, we've utilized the mountain. There are seasons for everything within the tribe. When the fish arrive, when the huckleberries arrive, when the bear grass is ready. Tribes moved with each season to pick different things, and it's important today, and it's going to be important into the future.
Today, 97% of the park is designated wilderness, creating a vast refuge protected from future development. It provides an escape for people seeking peace and quiet in an increasingly hectic world.
There's so few times in our life when we're just doing one thing. We live in such a fast-paced world. We have so much stimulus around us and 50 million things on our to-do list. And when you're backpacking and camping and hiking, there's nothing you can do about any of those things. It just makes me feel more alive. There's no other activity that makes me feel so alive.
Mount Rainier holds one of America's most renowned backcountry hikes, the Wonderland Trail. It skirts around the mountain's base, a 93-mile journey with 23,000 feet in elevation change. And Wonderland's roller coaster represents just part of a vast network of trails that lead from lowland forests to alpine slopes. Recognizing the mountain as a uniquely beautiful and valuable resource, Congress created Mount Rainier National Park in 1899, the country's 5th national park.
It was the first national park that had a full master plan. Its purpose was to lay out how would people access the park, how would they experience the park, and how could that development be limited, leaving 95-96% of the park to just enjoy a backcountry experience. When you're driving around some of the park roads and you come around corners and you just have this beautiful view of the mountain in front of you, that was all designed in by the engineers. It wasn't just according to what's the easiest and cheapest to put a road in. It was designed as an experience coming through the park.
Influenced by the area's beauty, architects and builders used local materials to mirror the natural setting. Their designs became known as the rustic style and were replicated in other Western parks. Because they embody the best examples of early park planning, Mount Rainier's roads and buildings are now designated a National Historic Landmark District. Today, the same sense of stewardship continues to inspire staff and volunteers. Every year, many volunteers help plant native species to restore damaged areas.
Even though we're volunteers, we are working here and giving back to the parks that we love so much. So part of our job is to take care of the place and the visitors, and that's a really good feeling. Because of our abilities to change and do things, we need to be very responsible stewards of the land and take care of it.
Embracing the ever-changing nature of the mountain, many seek something new and exciting in each season. In winter, snow and ice make much of the park inaccessible. Buried under a snowpack as deep as 30 feet, some trees grow twisted and bent from the stress of so much weight. But for many visitors, this is when the park reveals its true nature.
I love seeing this area from a different perspective, because in the summer, we have a designated trail system up here that we need to stay on, but once we have snow on the ground, it completely opens everything up. And then sometimes when it's really quiet, you can't even see the mountain, you can hear the mountain, you can hear avalanches, you can hear the glaciers kind of pop and crack as they move. If you're the first one out in the morning, you can see lots of animal tracks.
Growing heavy coats and adapting to the harsh climate, Mount Rainier's animals endure months of almost relentless wind and snow. And conditions get worse the higher they go. The upper mountain is an extremely dynamic and dangerous environment. Days seem to alternate between record snowfalls, pelting rains, vicious winds, and blistering sun. Whiteouts sweep across the open slopes, reducing visibility to near zero. Because it poses such a challenge, Mount Rainier draws 9,000 climbers who attempt to summit each year. Only half reach the top.
One of the great things about mountaineering, and particularly mountaineering on Mount Rainier, is that it's a very intense way to live for a very short period of time. Everything that one experiences in a relationship in life, the struggles, the joys, the sorrows, the trials, the tribulations, it all can be found in a very short period of time on a climb of Mount Rainier.
We can measure ourselves against the mountain, but no single scene, experience, or even lifetime could ever capture its true scale and power. A wind-swept crater on its peak is as much a part of its character as a rain-drenched forest. And this boundless nature is the source of almost limitless inspiration.
There's some kind of magic, I think, about Mount Rainier National Park. It's like entering a holy place.
When I hike in it, I find that not only am I discovering the mountain, but it allows me to discover new passions and insights inside of me.
It gives measure to the rest of my life. And I met my best friends here, met my wife here on the mountain. I'd like to be able to come back here every year of my life, for the rest of my life.
I want to leave a mark for my grandchildren's grandchildren, like my grandparents did for us. It's just the importance of Mount Rainier. It's like home.